Do you think that rules are meant to be broken?
I think sometimes you need to break the rules if something's unfair, because if you know that something's unfair, you need to act.
You need to, important word, you need to act. You need to do something. And I think that ties in, I was trying to think of your last strength. Is it bravery?
Yeah.
And there's a big part of bravery that means you have to do something. And I think we're in this moment in this country where a lot of people are like, I'm afraid, or I don't know what to do, or I'm not going to act. I have to follow the rules, especially with these executive orders coming and saying we have to change all these things. So people are operating in fear instead of doing what's right and doing things to support people. So I think that's really important because a lot of people can get hurt in that. So you think about what happened last week when someone spoke out against what the president said, and he ended up getting in trouble for it. And I think that's also a big fear. When I said, if the teacher said to stop talking, would you continue to talk? But she now gave you a directive and said, then you could get in trouble, right? So is that part of the, maybe I should stop talking because she just said something to me and I'm not following the rules now and I could get in trouble?
I don't like getting in trouble.
So there's a fear, and I don't think anyone likes getting in trouble, but I think what happened with Representative Al Green, so he's the one that was like, this is not right. He was willing to take the punishment.
Welcome to Living in 3D Power. Discover your truth, discern your path, determine your power. I'm Dr. Amber Sessoms, and together, let's unlock our power, build authentic connections, and foster collective liberation. Welcome back to episode 9 of Living in 3D Power. This conversation today, it matters because this world, y'all, it will try to name you before you even know your own name. It will tell you to stay quiet when your voice is needed the most. So what does it mean to know yourself, to stand firm when the ground beneath you is upending, to speak when silence is expected? These are the types of questions we're going to grapple with today with Emma, and it has something to teach us. Emma always has a lesson for us because a child's truth is clear, it's unburdened, she knows who she is at just 10, but the way she talks about fairness, courage, and hope, I hope that it encourages you as grown folks to embody what she's talking about. So as you listen, I want you to pay attention, not just to her words, but to what she stirs up inside of you. Her thoughts on self-awareness, on courage, on what it means to act when something isn't right. So let's get into it.
It's me, it's me, it's me. It's me, it's me, it's me. Hello, it's me, Emma. Welcome back to Living in 3D Power, and today we're going to be talking about speaking the truth.
Speaking the truth. And I would like to start out this week just doing an icebreaker of sorts and asking you, we're big Marvel fans in this house, but if you could give everyone in the world one superpower, just one, it has to be a shared superpower, what superpower would that be?
Peace and love.
So you pick two. Okay, we'll give you that peace and love. Tell me why.
Because peace and love is within us, and people need to bring it out because some people don't. And I think people just need to be happy.
Well, I think you said something really powerful. You said peace and love is already within us. So it sounds like it could already be a superpower we have. Maybe it's lying dormant or we need to wake it up inside of us.
Like Hawk.
Ooh, that's good. That's a good analogy. So it's like Hawk. So Hawk, I don't know, I can't remember what happens. He gets angry, I think. Is that what happens? And then his superpower comes out?
Yeah, whenever he gets angry, he turns into the Hulk.
Well, you know what? That kind of ties in, though. So if you're saying peace and love, and there's so much anger going on in the world, that I think it does the opposite. It suppresses the peace and love that's already within us. So I would think anger and fear would be those things that keep it suppressed. So we had the superpower you're saying is already within us. I think that's been divine, it's innate from God, it's our birthright. And then the world will do things to make sure that we keep it hidden. So you're saying we need something to agitate that within us. And part of my hope is that what's going on in the world now and all the frustrations and all the fear, it doesn't allow us to further dampen that. This will now be a moment we can rise up and say, you know what? Peace and love is what we need to bring forth into this country. So I love that, Emma, that you're saying something we already have, but we need people like you to remind us of that. So I think that's great. So the reverse Hulk effect. Okay. So last week you said something, you were just dropping all types of gems like you always do. And one of the things you said was you already knew who you were. You've always known. And that's been a constant theme through our conversations together. So when we talked about your strengths, you were like, I already knew this about myself. And I was like, oh, there's nothing that's going to surprise you that we uncover about you. You're like, I've already known this. I innately know myself. And this is the work that I do. So you're already doing your own work at 10. But I'm wondering, because you talked about knowing who you are and not letting others make you feel different. So you remember how you talked about your friends don't make you feel like you're different. So how do you think people figure out who they really are?
I think that they figure out who they are when they're doing things they love.
Oh, so tie that into how you learned about yourself even more, things that you love.
I think that you need to explore to see what you don't like and what you do like. So, like, if your friends like something, you don't have to do it if you don't like it.
But maybe you want to try it because you might find something else to discover about yourself. So can you give me an example in your own life where there are things that you know that you like and that gets you closer to knowing who you are? The space that you're making.
Art.
I think you get that naturally from Daddy, although Daddy says that I also was really creative, especially when I was younger. It just shows up differently now. So art. So how does art show you who you are?
I think it's like my art style. I have a different art style than Maya. And, like, that's how I show my personality. And that's how Maya shows it.
Yeah, I love that. And I think because you're both so attuned and focused on it, it gets you really close to knowing who you are. So it's something that hours and hours could pass by and you would just draw or you create these things. And I'll just see you, like last night, you were like, look what I made. And you were just doodling and drawing. What was it? It was a picture of Maya next to Hero. And then Maya engaged with you. But I think two things can be true. So you do things that you love and you do that and hours pass by. You don't even realize it. You can spend so much energy in that because you love it. But I feel like it never depletes you. So you always have energy to do the things that you love. And also it connects you with other people that love the same thing. So you and Maya have this connection with art. And especially last night when you were drawing, you were showing Maya, she's giggling and laughing. And then I think she started doodling too.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important thing. So we talked about finding your people. So when you are so attuned to who you are and passionate about what you do, you're going to find other people that you can bring into your circle that are also passionate. So I love that. So more and more focus on the things that you like. Also try some different things. And then you can say, I tried it. It wasn't for me. And I think you also said something about your friends might like things that you don't like.
Yeah.
But you said they're still your friends. And that's okay because you're all unique and they can like things that you might not necessarily like, but you can still be in community with them and also find another community of artists or people that you really like to engage with. So both can be true. I think that is really, really smart. Okay. So now I just want to switch gears because I just feel like every week, every day, the unfolding, what's happening in politics. And I want to get your perspective on something that's really big in the media right now about this idea of decorum, about being respectful and doing what's right and following the rules, even though other people aren't following the rules. So I want you to think about, say you have your teacher and she's telling you to follow this rule. You're already making a face before I even say the question, before I even ask the question. Your teacher wants you all in this class to follow this rule. And you're like, this rule is unfair. So would you speak up?
Yes.
You know what? I'm not surprised that you would speak up. Can you imagine how you would speak up? in class. So say she's saying, there was actually an experiment about this. It's coming back to me. So Jane Elliott, I was able to be a thought leader when she came to Penn State Harrisburg. Jane Elliott was an elementary teacher during the time that Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. And she's a white woman. I can't remember where she lives, but she was so enraged and so angered and so hurt by his assassination. And she came up with this experiment called brown eyes and blue eyes, or blue eyes, brown eyes. I can't remember which one she put first. And what she did was she separated the class, not by race, but the blue eyed students in the class, I think they had collars on. The brown eyed students didn't have collars. And what she did, she just evoked this sense of difference among them. So she would say things like, well, you know, those blue-eyed kids, and I'm not verbatim exactly what she said. Well, say she was like, these blue-eyed kids are so stupid, or they're immature, or they steal. And what started happening is the brown-eyed kids and the blue-eyed kids there was even, I think, a fight on the playground, and then she interviewed them, but it turned into this whole epiphany and how we can just say something about a group of people that's not true. And then the other group believes it, because what was she doing? She was affirming one group by putting down another group. So it makes me think of when I asked you if you had a teacher or your teacher was in class and she created this rule, would you stand up? So thinking about that brown-eyed, blue-eyed experiment, and because you have brown eyes, right? Our eyes are so dark, they're almost black.
Yeah.
And think about your blue-eyed students in the class. So you're in class and your teacher is saying negative things about your blue-eyed friends.
There's only like
Not that many.
4.
Yeah. But think about that. So she's separating them. She's saying these negative things, and all the brown-eyed kids start believing it, and the blue-eyed kids start feeling bad, and it starts this fight. How do you think you would have responded to that?
I would have been like, it's not true, it's fake, don't listen to her. But if they didn't listen to me, then I would listen to the blue-eyed group, because I know it's not real.
So you would listen to the blue-eyed group that was being picked on or put down, and that's very true to who you are and your values and thinking about fairness and love, and you're going to gravitate towards the people that are being harmed the most and saying, I support you, I care about you, I know this is not true about you. But think about how easily it is for lies and this idea of difference to seep in, right? She did this experiment in the 60s, and it rang true today. Thinking about what's happening in the media about how we can say people that are immigrating here or crossing the border don't belong here, or they're criminals and they're all these horrible things. And we know that they're super hard workers and they keep our country running. And they also pay taxes when they're not even citizens. So all of these things are contributing to society. And in any group of people, there's going to be some people that are not so great or that are bad, but it doesn't speak for the entire group of people. So I think that's another thing we think about difference.
It's kind of like our classroom. If one person gets in trouble, the whole class gets in trouble.
Right. So think about that in a larger thing. If there's a particular group of people that look a certain way, and we'll say one of them did something that harmed another person, they all must be like that. Right? And your eyebrow again, because how much sense does that make? There's always going to be people within every group that are going to do something bad, but we end up punishing the whole instead of just identifying and dealing with that one individual that caused some harm. So I think that just came to me as we were talking, because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, Jane Elliott and her experiment. But also I want to think about, if you're speaking up, say you're the only one in the class that speaks up and no one's listening, and what if she told you to stop speaking? Would you try again? Or would you say like, oh, I have to listen because this is the rule?
I don't know. I would try again in a couple hours.
You're like, I tested the waters. She told me to stop. Okay, let me retreat and let me try another angle. Maybe I can come back later. So thinking about, some people say rules should always be followed. There's people in that camp, always follow the rules, always follow the law. And then there's some people that think, especially important things that are harming other people, then we need to break those rules. Think about Martin Luther King Jr. Think about, there were literally laws that said that we could not be in the same areas together, that we were segregated, we couldn't eat in the same places, we couldn't drink out of the same water fountain. And that was a law.
Water fountain?
Have you ever seen the pictures where it was white only, black only water fountains? So thinking about, that was the law. And there was a group of people, he led this movement in concert with so many Black women and their white allies and co-conspirators, and they forged this movement, which meant that they had to break the law. I can't think of how many times he had been in jail, but he would go to jail repeatedly for breaking the law. That was an unjust law. So thinking, yes, there are people that are going to say, we have to follow the laws, that's the rules. But there are those of us that say those rules are meant to be broken because they're not fair. So thinking about that, what do you think? Do you think that we should always follow the rules? Do you think that rules are meant to be broken?
I think sometimes you need to break the rules if something's unfair, because if you know that something's unfair, you need to act.
You need to, important word, you need to act. You need to do something. And I think that ties in, I was trying to think of your last strength. Is it bravery?
Yeah.
And there's a big part of bravery that means you have to do something. And I think we're in this moment in this country where a lot of people are like, I'm afraid, or I don't know what to do, or I'm not going to act. I have to follow the rules, especially with these executive orders coming and saying, we have to change all these things. So people are operating in fear instead of doing what's right and doing things to support people. So I think that's really important because a lot of people can get hurt in that. So you think about what happened last week when someone spoke out against what the president said, and he ended up getting in trouble for it. And I think that's also a big fear. When I said, if the teacher said to stop talking, would you continue to talk? She now gave you a directive, then you could get in trouble, right? So is that part of the, maybe I should stop talking because she just said something to me and I'm not following the rules now and I could get in trouble?
I don't like getting in trouble.
So there's a fear, and I don't think anyone likes getting in trouble, but I think what happened with Representative Al Green, so he's the one that was like, this is not right. He was willing to take the punishment because he knew in his heart what he was doing was right. And I think that could be the difference, right? I could get in trouble. I probably will get in trouble. Well, that makes you nervous. So think about that. So sometimes when people stand up against something unfair, they get in trouble. So thinking along the lines of that in terms of breaking the rule and the fear of getting in trouble, but you know it's right, I think about the civil rights movement. What do you think takes more courage? So does it take more courage to follow a rule you don't agree with, or does it take more courage to break the rule and stand up for something important?
Follow the rule that you don't agree with, because it could be frustrating and you're not being true to yourself.
Has that ever happened to you?
No.
And I can think of times, and I talk to adults about this in leadership, where they don't agree with something and they sit there in silence. And then after the meeting or after the thing, they beat themselves up because they're like, why didn't I say anything? And what I often tell them is, had you said something in the moment to disrupt it, to stop the harm from occurring, or to say that's untrue, you wouldn't have done so much of this back and forth with yourself all night long, not sleeping, tossing and turning, because you weren't being true to yourself. And there's a freedom in saying the thing and saying that's not right in the moment, even though it's really hard to say it, but you're teaching a lesson there. So if someone says something really hurtful and harmful, this happens to me a lot in my work, or we'll be in a meeting and you have this moment where you're like, ooh, that was not good. If I say something, it's going to make people uncomfortable, or I'm going to throw off the meeting. But if you don't say anything, that thing that happened in the meeting, that harm that they did, now we just put out a whole message that says, this is how we do things here. We just say mean things and we're okay with it, right? So I can think of a recent example. So I was in a situation where we're in this meeting and an administrator was said a really hard, he said colored in a meeting. He used the term colored. And I'm thinking that word hasn't been used. And he's probably my age or younger than me. So I'm sitting in this meeting, but it's just myself, the administrator, and his quote unquote subordinate. So someone that he is over in terms of authority over. So I remember being in that meeting and being like, if I say something, your face is still, your jaw still dropped, right? This is just maybe a year or so ago. So I remember sitting in the meeting, and I'm on Zoom and they're in person, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he just said that after we were talking about how some students of color were being harmed. But I made a choice in that moment, and I didn't say anything in the moment, which I often do, because I was reading the room and I was thinking, if I say this, he's going to freak out, because I'm now reprimanding him, quote unquote, reprimanding him in front of someone that he is a manager over, a leader over. So what I did was I sent him a message afterwards and said, we need to talk about what happened in that meeting. I didn't hear back from him. But what I did was I contacted the other person in the meeting, and I said, I just want you to know what was said in that meeting wasn't okay. And here's the thing, and here's the importance about why we need to speak up in the moment, because she told me, I looked at you and you didn't say anything, so I thought it was okay. But that's the thing, right? If we are silent, then we're teaching a lesson. So what I could have, if I would have let it go, that woman would have thought it was okay to say that word. But I went back and I said, it wasn't okay to say that, here's why. And then I had a conversation with the other person, and I'm glad I did it separately because he did freak out. But that's beside the point. But thinking about when we have a choice to make, if we say the thing, it disrupts this notion about we are just mean people. We're just mean girls here. That might be something you might be learning in Club Affiliates. So we'll see. Like, how do you have courageous conversations? How do you say the thing? Have you learned any of that yet?
Well, we're doing a role play.
Oh, that's always helpful. I do that a lot with adults too, because you need to practice being courageous because people get afraid.
I'm the bully.
Oh no.
I didn't want to be, but I was trying to be nice because the other girl wasn't here, and I thought she didn't want to be the bully, so I decided to be the bully.
Oh my goodness. So did you already do the role play?
No.
You just got assigned. Okay. So, but you're feeling very uncomfortable because you don't want to be the mean person.
Yeah, I'm like,
But I think it's really good practice. So maybe y'all can switch and then you can be the other person. You can get the experience. But I think role plays are often really powerful ways to practice something and rehearse something before you have to do it for real. And it gets you comfortable with that. So I think that's a really, really helpful and powerful tool. Okay. The next question I want to ask you is, because everything that's happening in the world, people are feeling really overwhelmed. People have been saying to me, I'm feeling really sad. I think that has a lot to do with the weather. Right now, if you're watching, y'all, you can see the natural light coming through because we live in Pennsylvania and we spring forward. We pushed our clocks forward so we get an extra hour of sunlight. Thank God, because it was, right? It was so
yes, I was like
gloomy.
Like at 5:30, I was like,
it was getting dark outside.
The moon's out.
Right, the moon's out. So now we get an extra hour of sunlight, and people that suffer from something called seasonal affective disorder or SAD, because when you don't get enough sunlight, our brains, there's a gland in our brain called the pineal gland, and it needs sunlight. It needs sunlight to hit it, and it helps you releasing these positive hormones into your body to make you feel better. And when we are in this winter season, a lot of people are sad. I've seen on social media, we made it, y'all. Now the sun won't set until 7:05. We made it through seasonal affective disorder.
7:05?
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. This is also why we have to have some room darkening curtains sometimes, because you go to bed pretty early and that sunlight can kind of keep you up. Okay.
Yeah, I'm like,
but thinking about that, people have been feeling really overwhelmed because I think the weather, with the current administration, all the things that are happening, all the uncertainty. And when you feel overwhelmed by what's happening in the world, what do you do to feel better or make a difference?
wait.
Oh, wait, you have to go grab something? Sorry, y'all. She'll be right back. I can imagine. Oh, she's going upstairs. So Emma has in her room an entire drawer filled with fidgets. So when I worked as a school psychologist in the building, I had a whole box that contained a box of fidgets. So it could be magic putty, clay, spinners, just different things. So when students came in to talk to me about some of the trials they were going through, they could distract themselves so they could talk more freely by playing with something as they were talking. Or sometimes they would just come in my office and I wouldn't say a word and they would just go to the fidget box and they would just play because it would de-escalate, it would calm them down. It's a really great grounding technique. I still have fidgets. Emma has a whole box, like I said, and here she comes back. So I was just killing some time while you went to get something. So the question I asked you was, what do you do when you feel overwhelmed? And if you're not watching, y'all, she has this plastic, I don't know, what kind of bird do you think that is?
Eagle?
An eagle. And it has a beak, a hook beak like an eagle would have. And Emma is holding out her pointer finger and she's balancing this eagle on her finger. So tell people why that's the first thing when I ask when you're overwhelmed, what do you do? Why did you go run and grab that from your room?
Because I like the way it moves, and I like the way how you can just like do it, and I like the way it feels on your finger.
How does it help calm you down? So you visually, you're seeing something, you're saying you like the way it feels, you like the way it looks. How does that help ground you?
Because I feel calm and I feel safe.
I think that's good, calm and safe. And I think what it also does, it kind of refocuses your energy on something else. So if you're feeling really frustrated, angry, scared, if you take your eyes off that, I don't know how easy it would be to take your eyes off of it. Maybe you're still doing it, and you're even moving your pointer finger, but it gives you something. Oh, you did drop it. So maybe part of holding that on your finger is that you have to be focused on it with your vision, right? So if you're so focused on that, all those thoughts that are going on in your head, you probably can't have all those thoughts going on at the same time, right? So it's a good way to bring yourself back to yourself. And what are some other things that you do to ground yourself when you're feeling overwhelmed or sad or frustrated?
I like to listen to music, not Billie Eilish.
Yeah, we talked about this.
no.
Billie Eilish and Nirvana. I was like, we can do better choices of
I
that.
listen to pop music and I color.
And you sing. And there's something that we taught you very, very young. Remember belly breathing? Mm-hmm. And so we'll still say that today, like belly breathe. But I think that's a really good strategy because oftentimes when we're overwhelmed, something we talk about, we disconnect from ourselves. So we're whole beings. We're bodies, but we're also spirits. We're also all of these things that God designed us to be and put us in this fleshly body. So sometimes what happens is when we're really overwhelmed, we're just flooded with feelings. And what we will do is numb ourselves. I find myself doing this when I'm overwhelmed. I'll just kind of just be flat and be like, I can't be concerned about anything because everything's concerning.
I know.
Not you saying, I know, my little psychologist, right? Because it gets so overwhelming, and that's kind of my response until I have to come back to myself. And part of that is because I've disconnected from myself because I don't want to feel, and I feel things very deeply in my heart.
It's like your soul went out of your body.
Right. And that is a feeling. It feels numb, and it feels like you're not fully human. So there's a hamster wheel that goes on in my chest. And part of the reason why I disconnect because I don't like how that feels. But instead, what I've been learning through therapy and doing my own work is there's a lesson that I need to learn. Your body is one of your greatest teachers, so I need to lean into that and get curious about, there's a hamster wheel going on in my chest. It feels like literally a hamster's running on my chest.
Really?
Yeah. So what is that here to teach me? Something's going on, I'm uncomfortable, or I feel stressed. What I need to do to come back to myself, to not disconnect spirit from body, come back and ground myself. So part of what I do, I'll put a hand on my chest, hand on my belly, and breathe, because one of the other indicators for me is that I'm stressed. I shallow breathe or I mouth breathe. So I'm not taking deep cleansing breath. I'm just taking really short breaths. And we know your body needs oxygen. So I'll do that. And I'll also sometimes hug myself.
Well, I'll give you a hug.
Yes, or ask for a hug or like cuddle, right? But those are things like hugs, physical touch are really important to me. So I've had to find ways to help myself to what we call self-soothe. And you found lots of ways, and we've given you lots of different tools to use. Some work, some don't work. Or you say you want to use that one day, the bird, and then you're like, it's not working. I need something else. It's so important to have more than one tool. Pop-its. You have pop-it, math tables. You got pop-it bags. You got all types of pop-its. Sometimes it's just like a squishy or a little fuzzy animal, or even the dogs, or mommy, daddy, sometimes your sisters. You made a face.
50-50.
50-50. But you have to have more than one tool to use, because sometimes that's not going to work. Remember the other week I said, let's work on a positive affirmation. And what did you say? I said, use one of your positive affirmation cards. And you were like, they don't work. Remember you said that?
They don't, though.
Maybe for that particular situation, it didn't work because you were saying really negative things about not thinking you could do really well on math. And I was like, let's pick a positive affirmation. You're like, they don't work. So you found a different tool to use. And I think you used a squishy.
Yeah.
And that's important. You can't put all your eggs in one basket. That's an older saying. Like, you don't put all your things in one area, because when you try to use that tool, you're like, it's not working. So if I only relied on my affirmation cards and it's not working, what else am I going to use? And then I'm going to be lost. But you're like, okay, affirmation cards aren't working today. I'm going to my fidget box. Awesome. I love it.
I have a lot of fidgets.
You do. If you counted them, I'd say you probably have over 100.
I think I have like 150 something.
You might. And then you made some. But yeah, I think it's great. I definitely don't have as many as you, but they do come in handy. Okay, y'all. So we are at the end here. And what I want to ask you is... A seal bark?
Yeah.
Listen, all right. So if you could teach the whole world one lesson, what would it be?
Let's think. Self-love?
Oh, that's important. How would you teach that to people?
I would teach them to be their self and to not change who they are physically and mentally.
Come on, physically. Physically and mentally, is that what you're saying? I think that's a really important point, to not change yourself physically. And I think it's really important, particularly for women. I think women struggle a lot, and you probably start seeing this as girls too. And you'll get on me about this sometimes with my body changing. Right. And I appreciate you saying that. In a world, particularly for women, there's so many images as how we have to be a certain size, look a certain way. So a lot of women, some women, I would say there might be a lot though, that will do things to augment themselves, whether it is liposuction or different plastic surgeries they'll do to change what they look like. Why are you making that face? I'm going to start zooming in and just have a blooper reel of Emma's faces, because the faces you make, I thought I didn't have a poker face. I think you are me times 10. But that's true. But I think it's really important that you said physically, so I appreciate that, or mentally, because part of self-love is that we have to tell ourselves positive things, because we could be our biggest critics. We will bully ourselves. And if we can reframe what we say about ourselves, like, oh my gosh, I need to lose all this weight. How can I change that? And then there's a little Emma there that says, you are beautiful just the way you are. Love yourself. So I think self-love is super important. I think that is a great lesson, that if the world did that, but in order to love yourself, you have to know yourself, right? So it has to be a level of work. So we need to get more like you, where we're like, oh, I already knew my strengths. Or I am so comfortable even when I'm the only one in the room, because I know who I am and I know I belong any place I want to be. That takes real intentional work. So adults, we have to do that work. So I'm hoping y'all are inspired by Emma, because even at 10, she's so confident who she is. Not to say that you don't have some moments, right, where you get frustrated. That's normal, because you're a human being. We live in a world that wants us to be perfect. So when we aren't perfect, when we don't show up and get the A++++, we start maybe thinking negatively about ourselves. But guess what? We're human beings. We're not going to be perfect.
Robot.
Right. We're not robots. We're not machines. And I think part of loving yourself is also giving yourself grace when you do make mistakes, and learning from those mistakes, and realizing that your mistake does not define who you are. And Emma's now balancing her bird and her bun.
It's a nest.
Oh, I get it. It's a nest. Listen, on that note, any final words for the people?
Be yourself.
Be your and hand clap. So Emma will be your cheerleader. Be yourself, and she will cheer you on to do that, as she's doing the cheer as we part. And you balanced it in your bird's nest the whole time. After every conversation with Emma, I feel like I get even more curious. about myself and the world. And so in this moment, there are 6 points that Emma has helped me to raise. One would be superpower and peace and love. So Emma didn't choose just one power. She chose something that we already have inside of us, power and love. So it gave me pause, because what if peace and love aren't just things that we have to fight for, but things we have to wake up inside of ourselves? But fear and anger, they bury love and peace. The world will do everything, right, so that we can keep it hidden. But what if we brought it out? What if we let it lead? And Emma made a connection to Hawk, which I loved, which got me thinking about a reverse Hawk effect instead. So if anger is unlocking power with Hawk, what if love did that instead? What would that look like? And what if we move through the world like that? 2, knowing who you are and standing up for yourself. So Emma said, you figure out who you are when you're doing what you love. So think about that. She believes you figure out who you are by paying attention to what makes you come alive. I love talking about that. How many of us have lost touch with that? How many of us don't even know what we love? How many of us have never even given ourselves permission to explore it? So self-discovery isn't guessing, it's an unfolding process, a returning. And when you know yourself, you find people that align with that. And because you're walking in your truth, truth recognizes truth. So here's a challenge. What's something you could do today just because you love it? Not because it's for work or for validation, just for you. All right, 3, courage and breaking the rules for justice. So the Jane Elliott experiment, right? How quickly does a lie become a belief? How easily do people accept what is told about themselves and others? And Emma's response was, I would tell those blue-eyed people that it's not true. And that's the lesson. The world runs on unchallenged narratives. Speaking up, naming what is false isn't just an act of defiance, it is a necessity, y'all. But at what point do we as adults start hesitating? When do we go from, that's not true, like Emma, to maybe I shouldn't say anything? Because silence lets in harmful narratives and they grow and they fester. And when we let those lies persist, they don't just harm the people they're aimed at, they rot the soul of the people who believe them too. 4, the cost of speaking up and the fear of getting in trouble. So Emma said something that stuck with me. I don't like getting in trouble. And I felt that because honestly, most of us don't. We don't want the backlash. We don't want the discomfort. We don't want to take the risk. And yet I know that staying silent when something is wrong is not obedience. It is self-betrayal. And Representative Al Green, he stood up. He spoke truth to power and he was punished for it because the truth, it disrupts. It always has. But the real question isn't whether breaking an unjust rule is risky. It's whether following it, knowing it's wrong, isn't the greater harm. And 5, how do I ground myself when the world feels really heavy like it does now? And Emma, she got a whole toolkit, y'all. She has fidget toys, she listens to music, she sings, she draws, simple things that bring her back to herself. And that is the thing. Grounding isn't about escaping. It's about returning. It's about refusing to let the world pull you so far away from yourself that you forget what steady feels like. So hugs, she says, and reminding herself that she's safe. I do the same thing. And that is the root of it all. The root is that we need to feel safe in a world that often demands otherwise. So what's in your toolkit? When the weight of the world feels like too much, how do you come back to yourself? For me, it's gospel music, it's lo-fi beats, it's waking up before the house stirs so I can have quiet time. It's lighting candles, it's deep breaths, it's hot tea, and even fidget toys. So 6, the final lesson Emma left us with is be yourself. And that is a resounding proclamation from her. It's simple, but it's not easy, y'all. But she reminds us that self-love is not indulgence, it's protection. It's an act of saying, I do not need to change myself physically or mentally to fit in someone else's idea of me. The challenge, though, in a world that profits from our insecurities, how do we practice radical self-acceptance, radical self-love? And the reminder is you are already enough. You just have to remember who you already are. So in closing, y'all, Emma's wisdom is clear. Know yourself, speak your truth, and act when something isn't right, which aligns with my 3D Power Tools framework. And that's discovering who you are, discerning the truth, and determining the action that leads to a more liberated world. We have to act. The real work, though, it isn't just in seeing injustice, which is great. We have to be able to name it, but it's in choosing what do we do next. So if Emma's words resonated with you, don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube, follow on Substack, and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. Your support really helps spread these powerful conversations. So until next time, keep discovering, keep discerning, and keep determining your path. Take care, y'all.